What if I told you that being married to an emperor didn't mean a life of power and riches? If you think being close to royalty meant you were treated like royalty, then you don't know Emperor Nero. He was one of Rome's most powerful men, famous for music, theater, and terrifying cruelty. And one of the darkest things he ever did, he forced a young boy named Sporus into marriage. But this wasn't love. It was a nightmare dressed as ceremony. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a punishment, a trap, and a twisted way to rewrite history. Today, we'll count down 10 brutal reasons why you wouldn't last a single day as Nero's spouse. From strange public rituals to cruel punishments, this isn't a love story, it's a warning from history. Before we dive in, just a quick ask. These videos take a lot of time, research, and care to create. If you're enjoying the journey through these forgotten corners of history, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means everything to the channel and helps keep these stories alive. Thank you so much. Now let's begin the countdown. Under Nero, even your body wasn't yours. He wanted control over everything, even things no one should ever take. Sporus was just a boy, maybe 10 to 14 years old. Historians believe Nero had him physically changed to become more like a woman. Ancient writers like Suetonius and Cassius Dio say this was done so Nero could marry him in a mock wedding. We don't know how Sporus felt, but it's clear he didn't have a choice. Back then, being under Nero's power meant your opinion didn't matter. You were not a person anymore. You were part of his show. This wasn't done in secret. Nero showed him off in public, dressing Sporus in royal women's clothes and calling him Sabina, the name of Nero's dead wife. Many believe Nero was trying to replace her with a version he could control. This was more than just unfair, it was terrifying. If you were Sporus, your body was changed forever, and there was no way out. If you think being married to an emperor gave you power, this was the opposite. It took everything away. If you think a royal wedding is all about love and happiness, then you don't know Nero. The marriage between Nero and Sporus wasn't private. It wasn't sweet. It was a public show, one meant to shock and impress the Roman crowd. Nero made sure everyone saw what he did. According to ancient sources like Cassius Dio and Suetonius, he held a ceremony just like a real wedding. Sporus even wore a bridal veil, just like a Roman empress. Nero played the groom. Sporus had to act like the bride. It was all part of Nero's twisted game. The goal? Not love, but control and power. Roman weddings were sacred. They symbolize unity and the future of families. But Nero flipped that tradition upside down. His ceremony mocked the Roman values many people held dear. Some cheered, others stayed silent, afraid to speak up. And remember, Sporus was just a boy. He was on display for all of Rome, dressed up and paraded like a trophy. If you think weddings are about joy, then you would have been broken by this one. This wasn't a union. It was a performance forced on a child. If you think being close to an emperor meant safety or luxury, then you don't know what it meant to be Nero's spouse. After the public wedding, Sporus didn't get to live a quiet life in the palace. He had to follow Nero everywhere, to every party, every speech, every city. Wherever Nero went, Sporus was expected to be there too, dressed like an empress, sitting by his side and staying silent. This wasn't about love or care, it was about control. According to Roman historians, Sporus was even made to appear with Nero in public festivals, where people laughed or whispered behind their backs. But Sporus couldn't complain. He couldn't ask for rest. Even during Nero's wildest travels, like his tours of Greece where he forced people to cheer for him, Sporus had to be present, pretending everything was normal. He didn't belong to himself anymore. Being Nero's spouse meant being a living prop, forced to smile, sit still, and obey, day and night. If you think being close to power meant comfort, then you wouldn't have lasted a day as Nero's forced companion. You'd be a shadow, not a person. If you think love is the reason people get married, then you don't know what really happened between Nero and Sporus. Before Sporus, Nero had a wife named Poppaea Sabina, but in a fit of rage, Nero kicked her to death while she was pregnant. Historians say he deeply regretted it afterward, but not in the way you'd expect. Instead of grieving like most people would, Nero went out looking for a replacement, someone who looked just like her. And that's when he found Sporus. Sporus didn't choose any of this. He was a teenage boy forced to undergo a brutal procedure so he could look and sound more like Poppaea. Then Nero married him in a public ceremony, calling him Sabina and treating him like a ghost of the woman he had killed. Sporus wasn't loved. He was a stand-in, a body Nero used to quiet his own guilt. So if you think being chosen by a powerful man meant you were special, then you wouldn't last a day in Sporus' sandals. Because to Nero, Sporus wasn't a person. He was just a replacement. If you think royalty lived in luxury and freedom, then you don't know what it meant to be Nero's so-called spouse. After Nero's strange wedding to Sporus, he didn't just keep it private or behind palace walls. No, he paraded Sporus in public, but not as a respected partner. He made him wear women's clothes, jewelry, and even makeup, just like his late wife, Poppaea. Nero took Sporus to parties, ceremonies, and official events. People were forced to pretend that this was normal. They had to address Sporus as Empress, even though everyone knew he was just a teenager who had no say in any of it. Imagine being a child, dressed up like someone else, walking through crowds that whispered or stared, while your husband smiled and acted like it was all a game. This wasn't about love. It was about power and humiliation. Sporus didn't get to be himself. He was turned into a costume, a living reminder of someone who was gone. So if you think being part of the Roman elite meant safety and honor, then you wouldn't last a day as Nero's forced empress. If you think being close to an emperor meant comfort and protection, then you don't know how Nero controlled the people around him, especially Sporus. As Nero's spouse, Sporus wasn't free to go anywhere alone. Guards and servants followed him everywhere, not for his safety, but to make sure he didn't run, speak freely, or step out of line. Every move Sporus made was watched. Every word he said could be twisted against him. Even his facial expressions could be seen as disrespect. One wrong look, and that could mean punishment or worse. He couldn't speak to people without permission. He couldn't refuse Nero's orders, and he definitely couldn't talk about how he truly felt. It's like living in a cage where your body may move, but your life is not your own. There's no privacy, no rest, just eyes watching you day and night. This wasn't a life, it was a performance, and Sporus was the unwilling actor in a show he never auditioned for. So if you think you could handle the pressure of royal life, then you definitely wouldn't last a day as Nero's captive companion. If you think you could fake a smile to survive, then you don't know how dangerous it was to be around someone like Nero. Sporus had to act like he loved being Nero's bride. No matter how he felt inside, he had to smile, laugh, and play along with Nero's twisted version of marriage. Why? Because showing sadness or fear could get him punished, or even killed. Roman historians say Nero had a quick temper. He once had his real wife killed just because she annoyed him. So imagine how careful Sporus had to be every minute of the day. He couldn't cry. He couldn't complain. He couldn't even frown. In public, he was supposed to act like the happiest empress Rome had ever seen. In private, it was probably worse. He had no escape, no voice, and no way out. Living like that would crush anyone. To pretend you're okay while losing your identity, your safety, and your future. So if you think you could handle Nero's palace life by just going along with it, then you wouldn't last a day as his forced, smiling prisoner. If you think your name doesn't matter, then you don't know what it's like to have it taken away, just like what happened to Sporus. Before Nero, Sporus had a name that likely meant something. Maybe he had family, dreams, or even a future. But once Nero chose him, all of that vanished. Nero forced Sporus to take on the role of his dead wife, Poppaea. That meant changing his name, his clothes, his voice, even his personality, just to fit into a fantasy that wasn't his. Imagine waking up one day and you're not allowed to be yourself anymore. Everyone calls you by a name that's not yours. They dress you like someone else. They tell you how to talk, how to walk, how to act, like a puppet, not a person. There's no way to say no. You don't get to be who you are. And worse, no one around you even sees you anymore. They only see the role you were forced to play. So if you think your name isn't important, then you wouldn't last a day under Nero, where even your identity could be erased. If you think being close to an emperor meant luxury, then you don't know how Nero treated the people he loved. After forcing Sporus to become his spouse, Nero didn't keep him hidden away in a palace. Instead, he dragged him around in public, showing him off to Rome like a living statue, not a person. Dressed in royal clothes, Sporus was paraded through the streets, called Empress, and used as a symbol, not out of love, but power. Nero made it look like a grand romance. But behind the golden silk, Sporus had no choice. It was all a performance for the crowd. He was put on display, gawked at, laughed at, or pitied, never respected. Imagine being forced to smile while everyone stares at you, pretending to be happy while your freedom is gone. You don't get privacy, you don't get peace. You're not a person anymore. You're just part of the emperor's show. So if you think fame means freedom, then you wouldn't last a day as Nero's forced spouse, where the spotlight only hides the pain. If you think you could survive by staying quiet and obeying orders, then you don't know how total control worked under Nero. Once you became Nero's forced spouse, your life was no longer your own. What you wore, how you spoke, when you ate, where you went, he decided everything. Sporus didn't get to be a real person anymore. He was turned into someone else entirely, just to fit Nero's twisted idea of what a wife should be. He lost his name, his body, and even his future, and there was no escape. Nero was an emperor. Saying no wasn't just dangerous, it was impossible. There were no safe places, no second chances. Every part of your identity would be erased. Imagine waking up every day and pretending to be someone you're not, surrounded by people who either fear you or pity you, but never help you. That was Sporus's reality. So if you think silence would save you, think again. Because under Nero, even your thoughts weren't safe. And that's why you wouldn't last a day as Nero's forced spouse. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really helps us keep bringing forgotten history back to life. Thank you, and see you in the next episode of Dark Lore.